Hello and welcome to An Ink We Trust, tattoo and art culture in San Fernando Valley. Talking to you about our local tattoo and piercing artist. It's what's happening in the valley behind the jewelry and the flash art. I'm your host, Anthony Sanchez. Today we're going to be talking to local tattoo shop artists. We have Jason Thomas in with us from Clandestine Rabbit. Thanks for coming into the studio today.
Hey, what's up?
All right. Well, Jason is a Pierce College alum with an art major, and he has been working at Clandestine Rabbit for 3 years.
Correct.
But doing tattooing for 5 years. And you've also been a digital artist that I've seen on your Instagram and balancing being a father.
Oh, yes. Super crazy.
So why don't you go ahead and let us know a little bit about your art background first?
Okay, so I came to Pierce, and I did about, I think it was 2 years for art. And then after that, I went to Santa Monica AI, and it was fun, but too much partying, and I had to pay for everything myself, so I couldn't really do that. But I was really looking into like different kinds of other outlets for myself because, you know, doing everything. I had 3 jobs at the time. I really couldn't pay for school, and I went with a buddy to go get tattooed, and it was like life-changing for him because his dad just passed, and I was like, all right, dude, let's get a tattoo. And he got one for his dad, and like that moment, I was like, oh my God, like it's crazy, you know? Like he cried over that tattoo. I'm like, I want to do that for people, you know? And after that, I started doing my apprenticeship that took about 2 years. And then after that, I just started tattooing, but it was a long road.
So interesting that you got inspired to do tattooing because you went with your friend to see the tattooing. But at that point, tattoo never came up for you? Like you didn't have any tattoos yourself at that point? I
had one. I think I got it. I was like 16, 17, you know. But I wasn't really like full focus. I knew I wanted a tattoo, but I knew I couldn't. I was like, oh, I need a good job, you know?
Yeah.
But I didn't know how amazing tattooing was back then. I was still a kid.
Right. So how old were you then? Because not to give away your age.
I'm 29, so
okay.
Yeah. Well, turning 29 this year.
All right.
So what was I? Like 22, 21?
Nice.
When I started? Yeah.
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 I mean, that's the interesting thing about why I'm doing the show, because when I got my sleeve as well, like you don't really go to college, or it's not on the brochure, right? Like be a tattoo artist.
Well, okay, so the crazy thing is there's a lot of places that you have to do it through a mentor.
Right.
But like I believe it's Portland, you go to a tattoo school and you have to do hours, but you have to pay for that. It's like $10,000 to $20,000. But you don't really get the same kind of intimate like mentorship, and you don't get that bond with your main artist. Like that's like your dad. You know, like It's kind of weird. You're just paying to learn how to do it, and it's 2 different worlds.
Right.
Like I like being a pirate, you know.
I like that you identify as a pirate.
Oh yeah,
this,
come on.
Thing. Yeah, I think that's another thing that I'll be covering in the show, and even a question that I'll ask for you next is, you know, that mentorship. The shop has been around since 2009. You had mentioned that to me earlier, and it had moved around a bit. But the guy that started the shop, he kind of, how did you end up getting connected with this shop specifically? Okay,
so I was moving from my first shop, and it wasn't the best shop. It was kind of like where you get your foot in, you know? You start there, you kind of understand like what you need to do. And I had a falling out with that guy. That's why I'm not really mentioning names or anything, but
good career move.
I know, right? But then I was looking around, and one of the owners of Needle Pushers, Rance, he hit me up and he's like, hey, I heard you're looking for a job. Come over here. And within an hour, I went to a shop, and he looked at my whole portfolio, and he's like, you know what? You know, you're good, but we need to improve it. And he sent me to Clandestine to meet Greg. And Greg, he was an amazing mentor. You know, he taught me from how to do single lines to crazy color and everything. I was under him for like 2-3 years, and I'm still learning from him. It's not like you learn it and you're done. You're always improving your skill.
And that's one thing I'd point out too for listeners, that here in San Fernando Valley, that your shop is connected to Needle Pushers.
So it's Needle Pushers and One Truth by CSUN.
Right. And as far as I know so far with me starting into this, not all shops are always connected like that. Or is there a family always?
So it is, Rance is the one that first built up Needle Pushers, and then Greg was a really good friend of his, and I believe they started Clandestine together. And afterwards, after a couple years of really seeing how many good artists there are out there, they wanted to open up another one. And I believe Gordo is the manager of One Truth, and then he brought some of our artists from Clandestine over there. And so there's a lot of good artists, and there's the owners, and the owners are artists at the same time. So it really just brings out a really good crew. It's not like one's just owning there for the money and everything. So
right. I mean, really there's all types. I'm already meeting all types. So yeah. Well, I don't want you to get stuck talking about the shop too much.
Yeah.
Why don't we talk a little bit more specifically about your art? Maybe I'll transition and talk a little bit more about your tattoo art, and then we can dip back into your because I know you do some digital art, at least on your Instagram.
Yeah. So what do you want to start off with? Like what kind of style I do, or
yeah, what do you consider your style? And I feel like I'm answering for you, but I know that artists don't necessarily want to be booked into a certain thing, or do you like having a specialty?
There are artists that like to do a certain style, you know? Like I've been wanting to stick to one style for a long time, but it's not that easy. Like I love all sorts of styles. Like I do black work, dot work, fine line, black and gray, color, but I really just focus myself on like more of a neo-traditional style, where it does like heavy line weight and like different colors, some bold, some kind of muted, and you bring more of a realistic factor into it. And then like we have all sorts of art styles out there now. There's even like anime or like UV lighting, and that's one thing I'm actually going to start doing too. It's like a black light. It looks like a regular pigment on the skin, but once you put over a black light over it, it kind of glows. So
nice. Well, it's nice to hear that there's a new trend happening.
Oh, yes.
With that. It's still changing.
2019.
Right? So for you, how would you define for listeners who aren't necessarily in the tattoo world, this is how they're being introduced to it, neo-traditional, how would you describe how it would look for listeners?
Okay, so if you ever looked at like a Sailor Jerry type tattoo, it's like really thick, bold lines, and use like a standard formula of color, like red, gold, green. Mine has like two different kinds of line widths, a thin and a thick one, and then also the colors could be sporadic. It could be to look more of what you are thinking in your head, or maybe just crazy pops of color. But it has the same kind of formula as the traditional tattoo.
Make another little segue into color. What are some colors that you feel just don't necessarily always work on skin? Is it kind of a free-for-all?
Okay, so a lot of people think white ink tattoos are amazing, and I'm like, all right, that's cool. I love to do them, but in a month or two, sometimes they just kind of fade away and it looks like a scar, or they just fade and you don't really see them anymore. With darker skinned people, like yellow on me it'll fall out. It'll look like my regular skin tone, But for some people, it all depends if you're allergic too, because there's different pigments with different kinds of material inside. So you don't know if you're allergic to it. But if you're allergic to like nickel or copper, that really does factor into it.
Mm-hmm. And that's something you got usually with you go into a shop, you kind of sign a little form, but
Yeah,
you
so
kind of go on their word.
everybody has to fill out a form, and then that's when you actually figure out, like, hey, are you diabetic? Oh, you have this. Oh, you have that. All right, cool. I'll work with you.
So with your own art, since you understand, lines and composition and colors and how they blend together, where's the line for yourself? Does it blurred between your tattoo work and then your actual artwork?
So I've been trying to merge my own artwork into my tattoo artwork for years. And for the first couple years, it was mainly trying to do like what I could do and then learning and basing my own artwork into it. And you finally get to like a place in your artwork that you're like, oh, if I do this, it'll look more like my style. And then when people come in, they're like, oh, I want I want your style of artwork, not just like, oh, I like this one on Google. Like,
Right.
So when people come to me, they're like, I just want you to draw it. Like, make something custom. I want you to do it your way. And that's when I'm actually seeing, like, for the past year, I've just been doing my style of artwork, not really trying to like use any kind of reference that they're bringing me, and I'm just drawing it from my own brain. And I'm using a lot of good references, but it's like I still have to redraw everything. It's not like I'm using each piece for it.
Right. I think that's a good time for me to bring up too. Like, what's the process in taking, say, someone does have a Google image or even your own image when you print it, then you have to put it from a 2D onto a 3D surface.
Oh yeah.
So it'd probably be hard for you to explain that process. But what do you think of? What's that process like?
So usually when someone comes into into my shop, they're like, "Oh, I want this," and it's usually someone else's tattoo, and it's on a rounded surface. You can't really tell what's going on, and you're like, "What do you really like about it?" Like we get down to the basics. Like, "Oh, I like the crown. I like the demon that's on it. I like the droopy stuff." And then I'm like, all right, cool. You like the placement? Is that what you're really trying to go for? And they go for placement, composition, how the line work is, because line work is very, very like satisfying for some people. Like they love the bold lines. They love how thick it is, and over time it just like solidifies. So when they come in and they show me all that, I kind of get a rough idea, and we sit down for like 10, 15 minutes and really talk it out. And I start sketching a little thing up, and they're like, oh, yeah, I kind of understand what you're trying to get to. And then I draw it up. When they come back after their whole decision making, after we email each other for a couple times and finally get a focused image, they sit down and they get this amazing tattoo after like 2-3 hours. If it's that big. But it's cool because they get to have their own custom art and they get to have their own style with them. And it's different. Like, not that many people get that nowadays. They go into a shop and they're like, oh, I want this. And they slap it on them, even if it's crooked.
How would you describe that other art? The people just kind of want it slapped on them.
It's like if you find something on Google and an artist out there's willing to put it on you, and it's like a lot of artists they spent hours trying to draw that, but if it's something like like what is that, Gucci, like a Gucci symbol, I totally understand if you're down for that. Yeah, there's different styles and different like ways of getting artwork, but I would love to do something custom, something that's unique to you, because you're the only one that's gonna have it, and I hope so. Like I hope no one tries to rip it off.
What's a good way for you and other artists to kind of get your images out there to sell that? Because you're describing, sometimes they don't have an idea.
Oh yeah,
right.
So nowadays, like Facebook's an option, but I really haven't seen my Facebook blowing up like that. Instagram is a huge like artist tool right now. I have been on Tattoo Do, and like there's been some other like art forums that I've been trying to get into, but Tattoo Do and Instagram have been the craziest ones that I've been getting a lot of like promotion status working for me, and people always messaging me, emailing me. So it's a good one.
What have been some of your challenges in helping somebody get a piece of artwork, though? Because sometimes they probably do bring in an image, and maybe you artistically, do you ever have to step across and say like, I don't think that'll work, or let me get it this way?
Oh, like that does happen. Like sometimes people want some, like a school that is not going to be the right placement, and like on certain body parts, like if your arm's kind of small and you want this huge skull on you, it's not going to just fit well. So we are going to have to angle it a different way, and sometimes you can't argue with the person. And that's when it's up to you to be like, maybe I'm not the right artist for you. And I've done that a couple times where I'm like, I cannot do this tattoo. Like, I'm sorry, I just don't want to ruin your body. And that's a good thing, it's more of a respect for the client than, you just making a quick buck,
Right. I know that from my little delving into the research for tattoos right now that there is a controversial subject of like face tattoos and
oh yeah. A lot of people are getting like up front. It's like they just want face tattoos and hand tattoos and like not even starting on their arms, legs, chest, back, nothing like that. There was a kid that came in and he wanted like 6'9" on his forehead or something, and I had no idea what that was about, But it is what it is. I'm not their father or like someone that's gonna guide them, but I will tell them I cannot do it.
Right.
Like it's up to me to do it. It is my like my own like self-worth, I guess.
Your artistic integrity was what I was going to try
artistic integrity, yeah.
Sorry, I'm going blank all of a sudden.
I know you had like a billion questions right here. Come on, man.
I got lost in this idea here. Why don't we dip a little bit into describe your own personal art, your style. Beside your tattoo art, because you have your neo-traditional, but then you have your other stuff that you do.
Oh yeah, so I do a lot of like black work, and black work is amazing because you can make something look illustrative. Or instead of like regular shading with like a mag, you could use a liner to go ahead and make like dot work effect. And it'll look like shading, but when you get really up close, you can see every single detail. And it's amazing if you really pay good attention to the details every single time.
What would you say, this is a loftier question, what would you think is the LA or San Fernando style of tattoo? Because I know that I saw that you've done other works in like Denver or something. Or...
Oh no, I'm actually doing my first guest spot in Denver, Colorado, in like what is it, March 22nd or 28th? Yeah, I'm doing one up there. So
anyone in Denver,
hit me up. Like I'll be there for 3 days. Yeah, so I'm trying to actually get my name out there. I'm trying to go ahead and show forth like what I could do, and like want to meet new people, learn new artwork, see ways of other artists, how they're putting things together, or actually like what kind of machines they're using, like what kind of ink, because if you're in one area too long, you kind of get used to that. You get comfortable, and then you don't really try to push yourself. You don't try to like actually push your art to a new level. So, me doing this can actually push me to do better art, actually see what else is out there and like adventure a little bit.
Right. And you mentioned earlier that you listened to the previous show and you kind of understood a little bit about tattoo culture prior, or what are just your theories or little information that that you can add to that?
Well, back in the day, I'm not like a historian or anything. I just remember back in like the beginning, like a lot of people, they would never even get their hands and throat and face tattooed. They would have to start off with arms and legs and chest, Even for like a tattoo artist, you wouldn't even see them completely tattooed on their face yet until like they were like fully, like there was no more space. Like hands and face were like your last option. And I was like, that's pretty insane, you know? But like, even for like Japanese culture, like their culture is really meaningful. Like if you get a koi, or like a koi going upstream has a meaning. Going downstream has a meaning. Everything has a meaning. And if you go to a regular tattoo artist that doesn't know about it, then they're going to put the wrong meaning on there and you don't know. And like, that's where you need to actually pick your artist. You need to go to someone that knows these kinds of things. Like, someone came to me for a Polynesian piece, and I was like, all right, I know some background to it, but there was these like some images in there I had no idea. So I had to do my own research before even trying to tattoo it. But he showed me a piece and it looked like a fish, but it was just like a blob. I'm like, what is this?
Well, we're coming towards the end of our show. I do want to kind of talk a little bit about, briefly, where do you see yourself in 10 years?
That's a good question. I've always wanted to open up my own shop, and like, I know maybe in 10 years I could open one, but it's a lot of paperwork, and I know being a manager and everything.
It's not very pirate.
I know it's not a pirate life, but I'm down to try it, you know?
So what are some future projects you got coming up that you want to pitch? You just mentioned your Denver show. Any other things that are going on?
Yeah, so I'm gonna guest spot in Denver. I'm gonna do at least 2 of the conventions this year. I'm gonna try to do Ink and Iron. I've always wanted to do that one. And there's one in Arizona that I got invited to, but I missed it, you know. But I want to try to do more of those, because you get to meet some really like people you've been looking at for years, and you've been following their artwork. Not even like people you know, just like people you look up to, and you're just like, wow, how do they even do that? You know, like your inspiration. And there are some really good people out there that I would love to pick their brains just for like 20 minutes.
And hopefully my show can kind of help connect other people with a similar idea.
Of course.
Well, Jason, thanks for coming by the show today. It's been a rainy day in LA today, so, you know, it's an extra trek. Remind us where we can find you on, you know, Instagram, Twitter, or Facebook.
Instagram, you can find me on J Thomas Inks. You'll put it on your page, right?
Yeah, I'll have some stuff on my page. I have an Instagram as well, so I'll be linking to that.
Oh, sure. My tattoo shop is on Clandestine Rabbit. It's on Reseda and Ventura. If I'm not there, you know, anyone at our shop is more than capable of tattooing. We have styles from anime to black and gray to UV to realism, color realism, traditional. Like, we do everything there. So if anything, come get me.
Thanks again for being on the show. Again, this is Clandestine
Rabbit. Yeah.
For more information, you can go on kpcradio.com. Coming up next on my show, we have guests from Oak and Poppy in Woodland Hills. I want to thank you all for listening. I'm Anthony Sanchez. I hope you join me next week.